You're no more industrial
Yeah.
than we are
Residential.
commercial or resident. I mean, if you're going to put us, if you wanted to find one of those three
Okay.
categories,
We just
that
want
we
to
most
find out
closely
what-
resemble.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This is the Finance Committee on Monday, October 28th, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is public comment, and this is the time where you can address the council, not the council, the Finance Committee, I'm sorry, with a time limit of 5 minutes. Is there anybody here for public comments? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to our regular business items. Our first item is the approval of the minutes from the August 19th regular meeting.
Move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to item number 2, the Warlow Rest Stop discussion, presentation by Daniel Galvez, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Chairman Smith and Finance Committee members. Here today to discuss the CH Warlow Rest Stop request from Caltrans. So in 2020, the city did receive a request to connect to the city water system for the CH Warlow Rest Stop, which is located on Highway 99, just south of Kingsburg. They were looking to provide a connection to their rest stop due to the failure of their well and their inability to provide a reliable domestic water use for their use at the rest stop. On March 4th, 2020, staff presented an item to council to authorize a water model to review to see if that connection would be feasible. The results of that study did indicate that at that time that there would be no issues to the water system, but that it could not provide adequate fire or water to provide fire protection water. COVID came around and there were some delays. Later on in 2023, Caltrans re-engaged the city to reestablish that connection and move forward with that project. They had put it out to bid, they had awarded it, and were ready to kind of move forward. There was a little bit of a confusion there regarding, kind of how that was approached. I think there was a misunderstanding on what that water model actually approved, whether it actually approved the connection or it actually just said, hey, the city of Kingsburg water system will sustain this connection. So in order to allow water to be connected there, it does require city council approval. That they do need to enter an agreement with them. In addition, Tulare County LAFCO also needs to authorize that connection. So we're here today to have the Finance Committee review the proposal. They are looking to provide a water connection to their rest stop. There are a couple alternatives. The Finance Committee could choose not to recommend the connection to the city's municipal water system, or the Finance Committee could choose to recommend the connection with changes to the proposed agreement, which is attached. A couple other items. I know there's questions regarding conservation, and so the city is aware of those. We have contacted the State Water Board to get clarification. Unfortunately, those have been a little bit unfruitful on our end to get clear direction on how we want to both classify those or count that water usage towards the city's consumption. Part of that formula that the state uses is population-based, so as you're using more water, you can use your population to offset some of the usage. Because it's a rest stop, it has no population, so we're using water, but there's not a population to offset that. So we have discussed with the state to allow us to use a variance. And so initially we got some feedback from the state that said, hey, you don't need to count it right now, but later on it may be something that impacts you kind of as your base. So it is something, for the Finance Committee to consider. But like I said, we're still awaiting final direction from the State Water Board of how we can allow this connection to not count towards us. Like I said, we are working on getting a variance. We were hoping to have it done, prior to this meeting, but unfortunately we weren't able to get that from them. We do have some representatives here from Caltrans to answer any questions regarding the rest stop and the need for the rest stop, but also here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Committee discussion?
Just questions for any of the representatives here from Caltrans. So the site originally had a well, correct?
I'm sorry?
The site originally had a well. That's how you had your water connection originally?
We do have a well. It still works for the landscape.
Okay.
At this point. And Jefferson, we are going to use that for the landscape, right?
Yeah, we will continue to use the well that's on site for the landscape. Unfortunately, we're unable to determine why the well keeps coming up with problems for potable use. But it became such a problem that it made more feasible. It made more financial sense to go about it this way.
So is the issue water quality or is it actual
Water
supply?
Quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it were just supply, we could have maybe, like we're doing, we're putting tanks in. We're essentially taking the water and holding it there so that at any given time we have enough supply. But it's not necessarily that you're. Sorry, am I over?
No, you can go on, just to make sure everybody hears.
Yeah, just it's not. Yeah, so it's not a supply issue. It's a quality issue. Yeah. In addition, like we are obligated, just like you are, to make sure that the water is tested and is safe and all those things like that. But for our purposes, we're a highway. We're responsible for the highway. We're not generally concerned about water potability, but we end up, our maintenance crew, for the amount of time and money we are having to put into making sure that it was potable, it made more sense to turn it over also to you, because that you already are responsible for maintaining a larger water supply that's clean and suitable for human consumption. So for all those reasons, it just made sense to make the switch.
Sure. I know the rest stop's been closed for a while. Is the only remaining reason right now potable water, or are there other?
We've got about a month or two before that will be essentially they are currently building an enclosure that will hold the tanks that the water coming from you will go into. Once that's done, it's just the connection to you guys that will be keeping us from opening the doors.
Our construction manager is here too.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And so you can address.
Yeah, so we're getting to a point where the contractor, we went ahead and put the line in, but we're at a point now where we're at a point where the contractor has to make the connection to do all the testing and everything to move forward. So we're kind of right close to the end of the project. This is kind of like the last thing we need to do before.
We would appreciate your consideration, of course, to connect the water system.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Alex Henderson. I'm the city manager. So I've been familiar with the project since 2020 when you guys originally approached us. I don't think that there's been necessarily adversity to the project in general. I would say that some of the things that have happened since that time with regards to what the state is asking of us have maybe changed the dynamics a little bit, such that we're trying to make sure that if we do make the connections, we obviously understand the reason for it and, potential necessity for it is that, there's not an undue burden coming from our residents, right? So if we have to show our usage, if we have to reduce our consumption, right now we're projected to have to reduce our consumption by almost 50% by 2040. That's based upon usage that doesn't include a rest stop currently. And so, I think, the big thing for us is just making sure that, we have some answers to that. And I don't know, I guess maybe my request to you today would be to see if you're able to make any contacts at the State Water Resources Board. It was another governmental agency to help explain the need for this and, explain, how, we can at least this committee, from my perspective, could have some assurance that, we won't have to somehow make up for this, on the backs of our residents down the line, before I would feel comfortable making the final recommendation to the city council. And ultimately, it's the city council that will make this choice one way or another. But I just, that's from my perspective, that's been my concern. I mean, back in 2020, I think those were some general thoughts, but certainly as the things have changed from the state's level in the last 4 years, it makes it even more imperative. But I also appreciate the position you guys are in as well.
Yeah, I have to assume that they, well, first of all, we have reached out to, we have in headquarters, we have a gentleman whose whole job is to be responsible for the rest areas all over the state. He's currently seeking to see if he can find out if there's some language already exists that we can just use as our exception. However, the state, up and down the state, buys water for irrigating. I hesitate to mention, we're already irrigating the landscape that runs through, on 99 that in the area near Kingsburg. But we do that up and down the state. That the state has to, if they're gonna impose this on you, they need to also remove themselves from the calculations that you guys are doing. So I assume there's a way. I was hoping though we might find, since we don't have an answer yet, but we have till 2030, I think, before it really comes down, that we might be able to move on and then also, and then find our solution. But it sounds like that's not something you guys would be comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just speak for myself personally. I mean, I appreciate where you're coming from. I'm just concerned that once the connection's made, the connection's made, right? And then what's our ability to ensure that, we don't have to find another way to backstop that. I guess my other question is, we're in the middle of doing a water rate study, which you guys may or may not be aware of. So I guess,
We were informed.
yeah. So just making sure you're aware that even if there was a connection, that rate in the future could potentially reflect what we're concerned about today. Whether there's some sort of recharge fee or something like that. I don't know what might come from that study, but I think we're looking. We do have some other extraterritorial connections that we have right now. Not quite as unique as this because they're usually associated with a house or a business or something like that. But I guess just making sure that for transparency's sake, you guys are aware that rate could change in the future. The rate for water.
Yeah. Is it expected that it might change more than the?
So just to kind of speak on the water rate portion of it, currently the city has one rate that it charges for both residential and commercial. That is most likely to change based on the connection size. So we're looking at some of the parameters of what qualifies something as a commercial unit. We're looking at what type of connection would maybe be considered industrial. And so these kind of fall, usually you have a good definition, single family homes, multifamily homes, those are commercial, single family homes, residential. Given that this is a rest stop, it doesn't really fit into any of those categories, but it may be defined based on the meter size of how big a connection or what that connection is defined as. And so those would be proposed, them being one of the users that uses water. They would get a notice for that when we have the public hearing for any proposed rate changes, as long as, through the Prop 218 process as well. So they would be notified. I mean, obviously we wouldn't let them know because it would probably just go to the state and sit in some kind of mailbox. But the water rate study is looking into all of those connections. Like I said, we're looking to identify all of those connections that are existing to get us a better idea of how to classify those. So it would be subject to a rate change most likely.
So if there was some issue later on down the road, hypothetically speaking, if we approved it today, but then there was some issue with the state and the water allocation coming out of the amount allocated to residents, is there an option to turn the current well water into potable water just by different, more expensive means?
The only option we would have at that point is to do another well.
Just very costly.
It's very costly. It's not really cost effective. And then, of course, as you know, you do the weekly chlorination testing and all of that. So it would be an expensive one, but this, if demanded by the city at that point, I think we will have to do it. But I'm hoping honestly that you can exclude that water usage from your usage. And it shouldn't account against, the water board should not account it against the city because it is servicing the state of California, the passing by, right? It is, of course, Kingsburg population is probably using it as well, but it's also everybody else. So it would not, I can see where it is not fair to be used against those reductions that are required. This project was initiated to meet the requirements of the federal and the state statutes to revise the science and revise that 40 years old system from the water stand and the sewage facilities that are there. So we are seeking some potable water to open that rest area, and we would appreciate it if it could be recommended by the team here. I know in 6 years from now, it may change, right? And we may have to do something. At this point, the contractor is finishing up the project. It's been on the books for a while. And the rest area is basically closed, so it's kind of very inconvenient for the public. At the same time, if we run into delay, I wanted to say that the contractor can start charging us TRO. So I think it's between $2,000 to $5,000 per day. So we would appreciate the help in some way, and I know we are proceeding and in helping to try to get the water board to do that variance, and we're trying our best, but we would like to get that pushed through if we can.
Do you think the state or Caltrans would be open to, I mean, if the council is amenable to it, some sort of language in the agreement that is different from what we have in other agreements that says that if the council deems it appropriate to serve it, but ultimately the state decides that the usage has to count, that then, ultimately we can, either turn that water off until it's resolved, or you'll have to find another solution at that point. I guess I'm trying to give them, it's very difficult, I think, to put the council in a position to make a determination without, that would require our residents to resolve an issue that is serving the state if they don't have that if they don't know that information. So I appreciate you guys have a timeline that you're trying to meet in order to get that open. So maybe there's language that could be explored as part of the agreement that would protect both sides.
So I think we do have the legal agreement already, like
So
sort of.
we have pretty much a tentative agreement that we've reviewed. Our council has reviewed it, but if we wanted to put a certain covenant in there that it had a timeline where I don't know if the committee has a recommendation, 3 years, 2 years, 2030. I mean, it's up to you. I guess we'd be open to that conversation to discuss with Caltrans if they wanted to get it going now and then have a time period to revisit it. I think that's one that you guys might consider.
Yeah, if that allows. The problem becomes that we, as he was mentioning, if they get done with all of their work and we haven't yet made this connection and we're just holding the contractor because we're waiting for an answer from Kingsburg, we then have to start having to, we have to pay the contractor just to retain them essentially. And so it may be worth it because we're talking about what 2030 is when we basically have that long to try to resolve this issue. Is that what we're suggesting? But we would put put something in there that said, I think though, even if we said that was the case, we'd probably need to be notified. We probably need to also though know soon enough that we could program into our finances, in our project schedule, a project that would actually put a new well in. So we'd probably need to know, I don't know, you would have a better sense than me, since you project management.
It'll probably be 3 years or so before to initiate the project, 3 to 4 years, right? But at the same time, I'm thinking now we don't have potable water, right? So what makes us think that if we do a new well,
Yeah, we may not have
we're gonna
potable water
get
either.
potable water too? I think,
We have 2 wells, just for the record, we have 2 wells at the site. Both of them have a little bit of a problem. We think the problem is our proximity to both the Kings River and so many the agricultural uses around us that end up making the groundwater not. Yeah, it's all headed towards the river, and we just happen to be right in our groundwaters happen, where we're drawing from happens to be right in that area, so we just have bad water.
Yeah, and I think we want to be good partners, but respectfully, these are state issues, right? These are Kingsburg is here to I guess try and find a way to resolve that, and so I think having your guys is. I'm trying to find maybe a path forward for you with regards to the issue at hand, and I must not, I think, honestly, if I'm being honest, I think the concern is that if you're not willing to put some sort of language in there like that, I think that the council will just, politely decline the connection, and because they don't have the assurance then that they're not, we don't have to find a way to come up with that water difference, right? I mean, you're talking, 1,000, 2,000 gallons a day, right? So it's not nothing for us.
Can I clarify though? But you're saying the language would go in the agreement in place of us finding out for sure that we have a variance. Because if we somehow find the lane, we get we have good reason to say that we have a variance, then.
Yeah, I think what, to try and meet your timeline, if the council's amenable to it, is that they'll let you make the connection, assuming that, you can get the variance. So the work doesn't stop, right? To get the state, the resources board to basically give you a letter, or give us a letter that says, we will not count this water. But if they come back and say, you know what, in 2 years or 2 months or 5 years, and say, you have to count this water, then I think then the council at that time could exercise their ability to, turn that connection off, essentially.
which is by 2030, you're talking about.
I think that's
Or
the first.
I think we could make it at whatever
Yeah.
time that either when the variance becomes effective or at a time determined by council or finance committee's
Yeah.
recommendation.
Well, ultimately, I think if you can be careful, don't hit your head. I think ultimately, if you can get the letter from the resources board that said it's not going to count, then we're not really worried about a date. If you can get a letter in 2 months or 3 months. I mean, I'm not a council member, so I'm just trying to brainstorm. But
I mean, we would need, I understand, we would need 3 years to program a solution other than this. Unfortunately, as Daniel explained, we thought when we inquired and the modeling was done, that was essentially our approval to go forward, and then we got this far. So we need at least 3 years. That would, I think, and we're we're about to approach 2025. That means we would essentially have 2 years to find a variance resolution. And if we didn't find a variance resolution, then we would try to program a solution to get out of our arrangement with you by 2030. I have to believe that a variance is available, but I understand your concern that we don't have it today. We could talk about adding language like that.
do you have any thoughts?
Well, as a council member, I am amenable.
Okay.
I'm willing to do the connection, but not without assurance. So I cannot see moving forward until we know how the state's going to handle this.
Is
And-
his assurance, sorry, I don't mean to.
The variance,
Okay.
a variance.
Okay.
I cannot comfortably put this on the backs of our residents that we're going to have to reduce our consumption if the state isn't going to consider that. I cannot comfortably move forward without, yeah, and Alex brings up a good resolution, putting language in that contract.
So it sounds like maybe you guys need 3 years, right? So if we put in some language, whether that's 3 years or 2030 or 2029 or whatever, maybe that's something that has to be sorted. And if in the next 2 months you can get a letter that's set from the State Resources Board, then that goes away and doesn't really, it becomes moot, right, at that point. So, but I think there has to be some teeth in any agreement that would offer the, and I don't know what your timing is from a contractor standpoint.
So, the complete legal language was already approved by the council right here?
No,
And, oh, no,
No,
not yet.
no, not yet.
Okay, okay.
Nope.
So I know it was.
so, yeah, so we can work
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
on some covenant language to add to that agreement that indicates, I guess, I don't know if you guys have a preferred time period that says either if the variance is secured, then, the connection may continue, provided the state continues to allow us to have this variance. If a variance cannot be secured in X amount of time, then the council can exercise to terminate that connection.
Yeah, so
Or-
I think it's, when you said counsel, you meant legal counsel has reviewed
Yeah.
the existing agreement, so that's what he meant earlier. So
Yeah.
our attorney has reviewed that, but I think he would have to review anything that,
Any-
if there's a recommendation this evening and I don't know what your time frame is, so if there's a recommendation this evening, then potentially it could go before the council next week if language can be sorted by both sides by the end of this week, because it would have to go into a packet. Otherwise, you're looking at November 20th is our next council meeting.
The current council meeting for,
Our next meeting is the 6th, and the one after that's the 20th.
that sounds fast for the way our legal guys work. Okay, well, I mean, that seems like the only way we can really, I understand your concerns. I don't know whether any other way to proceed other than to throw that clause in there. Are you guys
We
gonna
can-
provide us with the language, or you want?
We can provide a draft and then have you guys, like I said, I don't think it'd change anything other than agreement except
Yeah.
maybe just adding a section.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm gonna get hot on the pursuit of some language already that gives us the variance.
Yeah. Alma and Christina, are you guys comfortable with that general?
Yes,
Direction.
I'm fine with amended contract.
Yep.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
okay, we have,
I have a question, and I don't know if it's these guys that have to answer or Daniel. I'm looking at this map. And, sorry. Can you come up to the, I'm working my way, I'm sorry, I was twisted up. Yeah. Oh, was that yours or mine? Anyway, this map here. And there's this thin line that's kind of parallel to the 99. Is that a pipeline that's going to be dug and put underground, or does it exist, or?
I think it's already in.
Yeah, we have already got everything but the actual connection in. We currently right now have an open trench waiting at what is the name of the street?
Earl.
Earl. Where we had already previously had a connection for irrigation water. I guess that's just the closest one to us.
But when was this put in, this pipe?
It was put in over the last year.
Really? And is this line accurate?
No, that's.
Well,
no.
then,
Yeah.
my question's kind of mute,
Oh,
then,
okay.
because I don't remember any
No,
pipeline going.
it's going basically along the highway, so.
Yeah. it's-
Okay, so it's more between the highway and the fence on the highway, the side.
Yeah, it's at least, as best as possible, it's 30 feet from the roadway and steers clear if there's any other utilities that are in the area. So we can't say that it's exactly in its particular place, but it has, for worker purposes, they try to keep it at least 30 feet from the roadway, so that if they ever did have to work on it, they're hopefully they're out of the way of a vehicle steering off the road and hitting an employee who would be working.
Because there's a railroad too.
So it's between
Yeah.
the railroad and the,
Yeah, the road.
and the freeway, so it's going along that area.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, because this,
There's a few spots where it's not 30 feet, but as much as
so
possible.
this is not accurate,
Yeah.
okay, that's,
But it's kind of. in
it's,
that-
yeah, well, it's,
In the same general direction.
Yeah.
thank you.
Problem.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, the Kingsburg Business Park sign discussion with presentation by member Alexander Henderson.
Good evening, Chairman Smith, members of the committee. This is an update to a previous discussion that we had on June 24th of this year, where we received an update with regards to the business park sign, which is now under control of the city. The Finance Committee at that time provided directions to ensure that any possible improvement to the sign be covered by the cost of leases, including ongoing maintenance, utility costs, and other costs associated. The city's Economic Development Committee, during their September meeting, made a recommendation to the Finance Committee to refurbish the existing sign without adding a digital component. This option is the least expensive of those explored and involves the least amount of ongoing costs as it relates to electricity and digital sign repair. Staff is ready to move forward on negotiating potential leases with businesses, beginning with those in the business park. We could have 5 large signs or a combination of half-panel advertisements with a total of up to 10 total businesses being placed. We are seeking Finance Committee direction to engage business owners with the intent to bring back leases for council approval. Some of the things that the leases would cover would be size and number of panels desired, the length of the lease, of each lease. 2 or 3 year minimums are industry standard. And the possible reduction in overall lease payments with longer annual commitments. The annual cost and security deposit, early termination language, assuming if there's a situation where a business closes prior to the lease term ending, and sign change and maintenance responsibility. Staff has been working on establishing a rate structure and has provided an example in your packet this evening, and would appreciate any feedback on direction of overall pricing. We've received some initial comments from A+ signs that our proposed rates are market competitive. A+ signs would be the contracted vendor and would provide services as part of an on-call agreement with agreed upon rates. That agreement would be finalized after individual lease language is completed. So in your packet tonight, there is an example, a couple of prices, sign prices you'll see there. One includes the potential removal of the word business park from the sign, which I think is still sort of in discussion. And then there's an example of what the painted sign will look like, although I think the final version that the committee decided on is not the blue, but it's just refurbishing the existing LED lighting, getting it repowered again, and then changing the top from the current blue paint that it is to a yellow, so that portion would stand out more. So just seeking any input with regards to the rate structure that the committee may have, or any other comments, and then ultimately direction so that Jolene and I can formally approach business park tenants to gauge their, well, we've already started gauging their interest a little bit, but they kind of all just want to know what the price is, and so just formal action to move forward in those negotiations. But that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. So on the back page, down a few down, a few more. After the picture. So are these prices, that's how, so it'll be $1,200 a year for the whole panel.
$1,200 a month,
Right,
yeah.
for,
Yep.
monthly for the whole panel. Okay.
And that's just an example. I mean, you could play with it and do, you know, a little less for a whole panel. This is just sort of for ease of use to sort of see. I mean, you could play with this any way that you'd like. I suppose that we did get some information from A+ that they thought that those were competitive rates.
Okay, so the 1,200 for a whole panel, that's competitive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little different because they're static signs versus digital.
Mm-hmm.
So you can argue that both ways because the static ones are there all the time. So, but then they also don't necessarily have the ability to change up what their advertising might be, right? So
Yeah.
they're just going to purchase a sign and put it up there.
Okay. So you're just looking for direction on the pricing, basically? Okay.
And I mean, and ultimately to make sure, I mean, I think the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee was to not move forward with the digital, any of the digital options because they were just concerned about total price and honestly, you know, a little bit about administering that. And, we've received a fair amount of interest in people and tenants out there already, and there's not a digital sign there now. So they know what exists there currently and are still interested. And so, you know, just making sure that the Finance Committee is aware of what their recommendation has been to this point.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Committee discussion?
So is a half panel half of one of those increments, like how the Sonic sign is currently?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who is responsible for maintaining each panel?
So that'd be part of the lease where we would essentially collect
That's part of the.
we would
fee.
collect a security deposit, you know, but then the fees, the cost for installing them, which will be through A+ signs, everything will be the responsibility of the tenant. So when you say maintenance, you just mean like if one of them breaks or something, you know, they wear in the sun or something like that, yeah. So that would all be in the lease agreement that we would spell out, and it would ultimately be the responsibility of not us, of the leasee.
Okay. And if some business doesn't make payment because they go out of business or are having financial trouble, will we have something in the lease just giving us the option to remove after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so we'd have termination language and we'd have a security deposit that would at least cover, you know, the removal of the existing sign. And then, I mean, hopefully we'll have, you know, more interest than we have space available. I mean, you know, it's not that we don't want anyone to go up there, but I think just based upon some of the initial feedback we've gotten, I think that there are, you know, at least, you know, 3 or 4, you know, that want full panels. So if you have 5, you know, you've got at least up for a couple of years. But yeah, all of those details will be important in the actual leases themselves, and so that, you know, we have coverage for that.
Sorry, just one more point of clarification. And the $1,200 for a whole panel and $600 for a half panel, the A+ signs weighed in and said that that was a competitive, decent price?
Yes.
Okay.
But, I mean, you know, and I showed some examples of, like, if you committed to a longer term lease, do you get, you know, some sort of discount? We don't have to do that. You know, that's just sort of an example of what that looks like, so that if you're committing to a longer term, then you get a little bit more of a discount. But, you know, certainly open to any input on that.
Okay. No, I like the pricing structure that you have, and if they feel it's, that's a reasonable market rate, I think that's reasonable, and you provide, discounts for multiple years. So, on this item, you're just looking for direction, right? Okay.
As long as everyone's comfortable with the current rates and moving forward with that, then I will give Jolene that information and we'll move in that direction.
I'm
I'm
comfortable.
good with them.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
good. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, the Townsend Public Affairs Contract Discussion with presentation by Member Alexander Henderson.
Sorry, Stacy, I'm actually going to
Sorry.
take this one.
Oh, okay.
No, it's
Oh,
just a last-minute change on you.
okay.
Sorry. So the Finance Committee approved the original contract for Townsend back in 2002. And we contract with them for grant writing and lobbying services for the city. We've had some successful activities working with Townsend over the last couple of years. A summary of activities, some of the major activities that we've had funded were related to a fire engine that we're still waiting on. We received the Caltrans Clean California grant for Heritage Park. We've received multiple Tri-County Healthcare District grants from both the cycle this year and the cycle from last year. We've also got federal earmarking for a new ambulance that's pending in the legislature right now, and another federal earmark for PD equipment, specifically for cameras, and that's also pending. So we've had a lot of success with them. That being said, it does take a significant amount of staff time and capacity in order to really utilize the grant writing portion of this contract. On the front end of it is communicating with Townsend about our information just simply to write the grants. But also long-term, there's usually auditing, reporting that goes along with grants, and just having that capacity to go out for a lot of grants can be difficult. So we've gotten department head feedback, and think that we have the staff to assist with the Tri-County Healthcare grants and potentially select grants that we think would be worth the city's time. So we received 2 quotes from Townsend. One is for the current services that we receive, and that would be grant writing services in addition to the lobbying services. We also and that's $7,500 per month. If we were to reduce that scope to just the lobbying services, they quoted us at $6,000 per month. So staff is recommending the Finance Committee to direct us to amend the existing contract for lobbying services, but we are certainly open to discussion and answering any questions.
Very good, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, any committee discussion? So all of the department heads feel that they all agreed that they were okay not utilizing? Okay.
Yes, we've had a few discussions, and you know, it does take a lot of staff time to work with Townsend on the grants, and also we choose not to utilize them for too many grants because of the commitment it would take.
Got it. Okay. Nope. Good.
I think another option that the council could always consider too is if staff identifies a grant in the next year that they think they could use assistance on, we could try and do a time and materials with either Townsend or, you know, there are other grant writing firms out there too. And so I think we just thought, given how much we've used them, which, you know, one of the challenges is that, you know, there are only so many grants that we qualify for or that are desirable outside of just, you know, going after, you know, every possible grant. You know, that it didn't make sense to continue with the monthly amount, but we have seen some positive successes with regards to their lobbying efforts, both at the state level and now the federal level. So I think continuing that relationship still makes financial sense.
No, I agree. I think they've done I think it's a good contract. It's a good company that we're partnering with. So I'm very much in support of it. I just wanted to make sure everybody, felt good about, bringing it down to just the lobbying services. So, no, I'm in support of that.
Then I will make the motion to recommend to the council that we move forward with the contract, an amended contract that just includes lobbying services only.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, the Space Needs Assessment Proposals. Presentation by member Christina Wendover.
Okay, so we have previously discussed the space needs assessment in Finance Committee as well. At that time, we had received 5 RFPs or proposals for a proposed space needs assessment. When we originally asked for proposals, we included an analysis of the existing City Hall building as well as the space needs assessment for future growth. After we received the 5 proposals, staff believed that there were 2 firms that were most competitive. Public Works Director Daniel Galvez reached out to references for each firm, and that was Griffin Structures, and I'm sorry, I forgot the other one. KPA. So both of those references were really positive. Griffin Structures was slightly more competitive. So we received direction from the Finance Committee to be able to negotiate with the firms to make sure that the scope of work in the proposal fit our needs and wasn't going to cover more work than we'd like. So specifically, we would like the space needs assessment to focus on a different building other than City Hall. So we went back and requested a revised scope that really minimizes the current building assessment and just focuses on growth. So they were able to reduce their total proposal by 12%, which would bring it down to 109,500, down from 125,000. So at this time, we are seeking direction from the Finance Committee on whether or not we should move forward with a contract with Griffin Structures, or if the Finance Committee is interested in providing alternative direction to staff. If you look at the background information, there is a table that shows the 5 firms that submitted a proposal, and it also shows their projected timelines and amounts, along with examples of their work, in case you wanted to refer back to that, and I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Very good, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, committee discussion? I have one question. Since we went back and they reevaluated based on the described needs, will the timeline change at all?
I actually don't know the exact amount of time that it would change, but it should reduce the timeline somewhat.
So then this timeline in the packet, that's,
That's what we would expect.
okay. Mhm. Very good. So they'll be doing, okay, I thought I saw it somewhere. They'll be doing one public outreach meeting and one, oh, it's on the very last page, and one, so one community outreach meeting and then one council meeting, and those will be in person. Okay.
Yes, and we can modify or request additional public input if we'd like. We really focused on just reducing the scope for purposes of working on this building. When Alex and I met with or discussed this over the phone, we did talk about that, and they did clarify that that was an option if we wanted to add or, well, potentially add additional public input.
I don't necessarily know that we need more. I appreciate that we have, the one meeting. I don't know how much.
I think that's good, because there's a survey included as well, so I think we can put that out, but, I'm not sure of that. I think the two in-persons, because I think people can still come to the council meeting and weigh in as well when they're giving their final results, if so desired.
Very good. Thank you. Very nice. Any other committee discussion? No? Okay, seeing none. Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion to have Christina or staff continue with briefing.
Make a motion to the council then to come to an agreement.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, the City Hall facility lease discussion with a presentation by member Alexander Henderson.
Yes, Chairman Smith, members of the committee. This also is a continuing discussion from, I think when we previously brought it up, with regards to the space needs as well, and because we went back to the drawing table to the drawing board on the space needs assessment. We also went back and renegotiated with the current property owner for the existing city hall lease, which includes the space that we're in right now, as well as the community development space right next door. And so really the main change from our previous discussion was to enter into a year-to-year lease as opposed to a set timeline. Reason for that was hopefully we would have some more options with regards to different facilities. So right now we negotiated essentially a 2-year rate lock, which would begin in November of 2024, and then would continue annually. And then after the 2 years, there is a 3% escalator that's included after that. And so I feel comfortable with the existing language. Gives both parties some opportunities each year. It allows us to continue it, while we explore other options for City Hall space. So this evening, staff is recommending, the Finance Committee recommend approval to the city council of the lease agreement in its current form, which was reviewed by legal counsel and is included for your review as well. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Any committee discussion? Very good. Seeing none, can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and moving on to item number 7, the fiscal year 2024 budget amendments, presentation by member Alma Collado.
Good evening. I have a correction. In this item number 7, there are 137 amendments, 83 on the expenditures and 54 on revenues. So as part of our review of the end of the fiscal year, we examine line items and we propose adjustments by the end of the fiscal year. So we usually have over 100 adjustments, and we can go over first. Let's see, 83. We don't have to go over every single one, where we can review some. Out of the 83, I have 13 that are overhead reimbursements. It's just a recommendation from the auditors. We used to transfer money from the overhead to the revenue side, increasing our revenue, and they recommended that we transfer it to the expenditure side and reduce it instead of increasing the revenue. So this is just that recurring change from how we transfer overhead, and we have 13 of those in the expenditure side. Then I have, let's see, we can go over some increases on non-departmental professional services, and it has to do with the bank services fees. We have more credit card usage, so we are incurring more fees. Number 5, 50% of sales tax rebate. We have anticipated 0, and then we have 2 businesses that were taking the advantage of the sales tax rebate, which are Cheyenne Steakhouse and Roadhouse. And let's see, we have also a decrease on the facade alley program. And item number 8, city manager salaries increased due to his compensation changes that were made in the contract during the fiscal year. Also, 11 out of the adjustments on the expenses side were due to medical expenses increasing on different departments. Professional services in the planning building department increased, and also the revenue increased on building permits. Capital outlay decreased because of the housing element. It has to do with timing. We didn't incur expenses yet, but there'll be some in current year. We have some minor increases in salaries for community services for the after-school program, and also salaries on the part-times that had a change on their compensation. Let's see, we can, animal control. We budgeted $30,000 and we only spent $3,971. I think now we pay $250 per dog. And the contract change is now per drop-off.
Yeah, well, so we budgeted a certain amount, which used to be a per dog amount, but because Selma and Second Chance went through their change, they didn't bill us for almost 8 months. So now we have a new contract with them, so it's a monthly amount, a flat amount that we pay each month.
Okay. Also in police, we have a decrease in PERS. PERS decreases when a classic employee retire, and that's when we see a change. And I think that's what happened in police with Officer Clark. No, Henley. Henley. And we have also post-training decreased, and also in the revenue. So they did not use all the anticipated expenditure, and they brought less revenue on post reimbursement. Increase on some patrol cars that has been carrying over every year because of that agencies not having them ready when they anticipate. We have repairs and maintenance increase, and it has mainly to do at City Hall for testing the building, and also for AC units at police and City Hall. Let's see what else we can go over. Kitchen remodel at the senior center. We anticipated to spend the majority in fiscal year 23-24, and continue carry to year 24-25. And on some of the capital outlay projects, we didn't budget it expenses, and we did incur expenses in some of the projects for dog park and transit-oriented development. We anticipated expenses, and we incur a lot less, so we're doing an adjustment to reflect actuals. And let's see, for item number 53, street light and signals, mainly of those adjustments has to do with electricity. PG&E bills, they keep increasing. And for Measure E, we have increases in police salaries and also fire department salaries and overtime. And when there is an increase in salaries and overtime, we incur more PERS expenses. We have a few more items that impact fees for the park improvement, that we anticipated more activity in that project, and it gets carried to fiscal year 24-25. Water fund salaries increased, and mainly has to do with the employees in that department acquiring premiums and step increases during the fiscal year that were not anticipated. Water fund utilities for the wells also increase, and that will be fixed pretty soon once we have the solars. Let's see, for item number 76, we have a write-off on the ambulance fund, and that one is mainly referring to the way that we record the SHARP ambulance billing. We are changing it from gross to net activity to reflect actuals in our books, and that affects also item 77, professional services. That's where SHARP billing, there's been an increase on billing for their ambulance billing, but also an increase on revenue. IGT expense increase, and same thing, the revenue increase on the IGT. What else? So that's pretty much for expenses. We can cover the revenue if you don't have any questions on the expenses. Out of the revenue, we have 54 adjustments, and they are pretty much to bring to increase revenue to actual. The majority are anticipated revenue was not, was budgeted conservative, and it came higher than expected, and we received some grants revenue for Department of Justice and Homeland Security grants. We have 10 of those budget adjustments due to interest because we budget very conservative on interest, and now that we are investing with California class, we been receiving higher interest. So 10 of those are for interest, and 5 of those are for, let's see, it has to do with the transfers that changed from the auditors, that how we recorded the transfers. So 5 of those adjustments is just the way that we are posting the transfers on overhead. Then we have some increase on swimming lessons because of the projects not being fully active with the outdoor park, the dog park. We are reflecting revenue to actuals, and pretty much is the rest of the adjustments is to reflect revenue close to actuals. For the water fund sales, we have a decrease, and that has to do with, actually, there is a correction on item number 45. The total amended amount should be in parentheses because it's a decrease in the revenue, because the water sales were not collected to predictions due to consumption. It seems like citizens are conserving water already, and this is going to help once we implement the rate study. That item number 46 has to do with implementing the SB 1383. So we got a grant revenue for that. Let's see. Number 48 has to do with how we record the ambulance charges, and pretty much all the other adjustments are to record revenue to actuals. So at this time, we recommend that review of the budget adjustments and to make a recommendation to council.
Thank you. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. Is there any committee discussion? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
A motion to approve the budget amendments as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, our next item is other business. Is there anything under other business? No? No? Okay. Seeing none, I will move to adjourn the regular Kingsburg Finance Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us.